Dennis Weaver really hated him more than anyone else. Dennis Weaver was born William Dennis Weaver on June 4th, 1924 in Joplin, Missouri. Weaver grew up in a simple, hard-working home that helped shape how he saw the world. Growing up during the Great Depression, he learned early lessons about never giving up, staying humble, and being responsible. These qualities would later show up in both his acting and his personal life. His family later moved to Oklahoma City, where he got interested in sports and acting, showing early signs of the hard work and focus that would help him when he was older. Weaver's life took a big turn when World War II started. He served as a U.S. Navy pilot, an experience that really shaped his sense of duty and knowing right from wrong. Being in the military taught him a quiet seriousness and maturity that audiences would later feel when watching him, especially in roles that showed inner struggle, holding back, or tough choices. After the war, he went to college, studying drama at the University of Oklahoma before getting a scholarship to the famous Actor Studio in New York. There he trained alongside future legends and learned the basics of method acting, which focus on real emotions and understanding psychology. His big break came in the 1950s with the role of Chester Goode on the long-running Western TV show Gunsmoke, as the shy, limping deputy to James Arness's tall Marshal Matt Dillon. Weaver created one of TV's most memorable side characters at a time when Westerns usually showed tough guys. Chester was different. Gentle, loyal, vulnerable, and deeply human. Weaver's performance changed what a Western sidekick could be, and audiences loved him, not despite his sensitivity, but because of it. His acting earned him an Emmy Award and made him famous across the country. But Weaver didn't want to be stuck playing just one character. In one of the boldest career moves of that time, he left Gunsmoke when it was super popular to try more challenging roles. This choice showed both his artistic bravery and his desire to grow. He soon found success in Gentle Ben, where he played a widow park ranger whose friendship with a tame bear became a symbol of kindness, caring for nature, and emotional healing. The show highlighted Weaver's warmth and moral strength, making his image as a man of conscience and empathy even stronger. Maybe his most praised work came with McCloud, where he played Sam McCloud, a lawman from rural New Mexico, solving crimes in New York City. The role let Weaver mix humor, toughness, and smarts, creating a character who was both out of place and quietly tough. His performance earned him multiple Emmy Awards and proved he was one of TV's most versatile leading men. McCloud was not just a cop show. It was a character study, and Weaver's detailed acting made it way better than typical genre shows. Along with his TV success, Weaver appeared in many films, including Duel from 1971, Steven Spielberg's early masterpiece. As an ordinary man being terrorized by an unseen truck driver, Weaver gave a gripping, subtle performance that relied on psychological tension rather than big action. His portrayal of fear, frustration, and survival really connected with audiences and remains one of the most iconic performances in thriller movies. Beyond acting, Dennis Weaver was really committed to helping people and protecting nature. Long before celebrities commonly did this, he championed renewable energy conservation and social justice. He founded the Institute of Economics, promoting sustainable living and taking care of the environment. Weaver lived what he believed in, building an energy-efficient home and using his fame to encourage people to take good care of the planet. His activism was not for show. It was based on principles, informed and lifelong. Dennis Weaver's marriage to Jerry Stoll was one of the most lasting and grounding relationships of his life, creating a quiet but powerful balance to a career that happened mostly in the public eye. The two married shortly after World War II at a time when the United States was coming out of years of global conflict, and many young couples were focused on rebuilding stability and the promise of a more hopeful future. For Weaver, who had served as a U.S. Navy pilot during the war, this time marked a big change from the discipline and danger of military life to the uncertainties of civilian life and the long, difficult road toward a career in the arts. Jerry Stoll became not only Weaver's wife, but also his lifelong partner in every way. While Dennis pursued acting, a job defined by rejection, instability, and long times away from home, Jerry provided emotional stability and a strong home base. Their marriage lasted through Weaver's early struggles in Hollywood, when success was far from guaranteed and having enough money was uncertain. Before fame came, Weaver worked really hard in theater and TV, often taking small or supporting roles. And Jerry's steadiness and belief in him were crucial during these early years. Together, Dennis and Jerry raised 3 sons, Richard, Robert, and Rusty. Weaver. Family life was central to Weaver's identity, even as his work responsibilities grew. Despite demanding filming schedules for shows like Gunsmoke and later McCloud, Weaver made a real effort to be present in his sons' lives. He often spoke about the importance of integrity, curiosity, and independence, values he tried to show both as a father and as a public figure. The Weaver household emphasized education, environmental awareness, and thoughtful engagement with the world, showing Dennis's growing interest beyond acting. Jerry's role as a mother was equally important. She kept a sense of normalcy for the family despite the unusual pressures of celebrity, protecting her sons, choosing a quieter life that allowed their children to grow up with stability rather than spectacle. This decision showed a lot about their shared priorities and their belief that success meant more than fame. As the years passed, Dennis Weaver's career expanded into activism, particularly in environmental and humanitarian causes, and Jerry stood beside him throughout these efforts, whether supporting his work with organizations like UNICEF or his commitment to sustainable living. Later in life, she remained a constant presence, reinforcing the values they had built together as a family. Their marriage, lasting more than 6 decades, became a rare example of lasting love in an industry known for relationships ending. Among the many professional relationships Dennis Weaver formed during his long career in radio, TV, and film, none was as strained, complicated, and emotionally charged as his relationship with fellow Gunsmoke actor Ken Curtis. While Hollywood history is filled with rivalries and personality clashes, the tension between Weaver and Curtis stood apart because it lasted so long and deeply affected Weaver on both a personal and professional level. Dennis Weaver was a fiercely disciplined actor who believed in preparation, psychological depth, and emotional realism. He saw acting not simply as a job, but as a craft that demanded seriousness and respect. Ken Curtis, by contrast, came from a very different background. Curtis was a singer, musician, and entertainer whose style leaned more toward showmanship and broad appeal. While Curtis was definitely talented and loved by audiences, his approach to the work often conflicted with Weaver's more intense, inward-looking method. Weaver later said that from the beginning, the two men were never on the same wavelength. In interviews, he suggested that Curtis's presence changed the tone of Gunsmoke in ways he found frustrating. Weaver felt the show worked best when it emphasized moral complexity and human vulnerability, while Curtis's character, Festus Hagen, increasingly brought comic relief and exaggerated frontier behavior. As Weaver reportedly put it, the show started leaning toward caricature instead of character, a shift he struggled to accept. What made the situation especially painful for Weaver was the feeling that Curtis's growing popularity made Weaver's own role less important. Chester Goode had been central to Gunsmoke's early success, and Weaver took pride in having helped define the show's emotional foundation. When Curtis joined the cast and quickly became a fan favorite, Weaver felt pushed aside. He later said that it seemed like everything I worked years to build was suddenly being pushed aside. This resentment was not just professional jealousy, but a deeper feeling of being misunderstood and undervalued. Weaver believed that Curtis did not take the dramatic stakes of the show seriously enough. He reportedly complained that Curtis played to the audience instead of the moment, a criticism that showed Weaver's frustration with what he saw as a lack of artistic integrity. To Weaver, Curtis represented a different philosophy of entertainment, one that put more value on immediate laughs and folksy charm over long-term storytelling depth. Behind the scenes, the tension between the two men became harder and harder to ignore. Weaver was known to be polite and professional on set, but colleagues later remembered an unmistakable chill whenever Curtis was around. Weaver himself admitted years later that he held on to resentment longer than he should have, saying that I carried that anger with me and it wasn't healthy. Still, he never really softened his stance, suggesting that the emotional wounds never fully healed. The situation eventually played a role in Weaver's decision to leave Gunsmoke in 1964. While he said it was because of creative stagnation and a desire to pursue new opportunities, insiders understood that his discomfort with the show's changing direction and Curtis's importance in it played a big role. Weaver later hinted that staying would have meant compromising his values, basically saying that I couldn't be part of something that no longer felt honest to me. Ironically, history has been kind to both men in different ways. Ken Curtis became inseparable from the image of Gunsmoke for later generations, while Dennis Weaver went on to reinvent himself with powerful performances in Gentle Ben, Duel, and McCloud. But even with time and success, Weaver never entirely changed his feelings about Curtis. Of all the conflicts and disappointments he faced in Hollywood, this was the one he spoke of with the most lingering emotion. In the end, the story of Dennis Weaver and Ken Curtis is not simply one of hatred, but of clashing philosophies, wounded pride, and the high personal cost of creative compromise. Weaver's feelings, though intense, show how deeply he cared about his craft and how much he was affected when that craft collided with a vision he could not accept. Dennis Weaver's death marked the quiet, closing chapter of a life that had been lived with unusual intensity, conviction, and purpose. He died on February 24th, 2006 at his home in Ridgeway, Colorado at the age of 81, after a battle with prostate cancer. True to the way he chose to live in his later years, Weaver passed away not in a hospital or under the glare of public attention, but in the peace and privacy of the mountain community he deeply loved. His death reflected the same values that had guided him for decades: independence, environmental consciousness, and a preference for authenticity over Hollywood spectacle. Prostate cancer, the illness that ultimately took his life, had been a private struggle. Weaver was not a man who wanted sympathy or publicity for personal hardship, and he rarely spoke publicly about his health. Those close